Hey, welcome to the Metadigm Digital channel. This is the Coffee Break Show. I'm Vickie Helm, and good morning. We are the network that brings you live shows all day long. You can tune in and catch up, and we share tips, tools, techniques. We share inspiration, motivation, the latest news. We share everything on this so we just lost YouTube. We lost YouTube right now. Can somebody pull it back up so that you can go ahead and absolutely go live? And this is what live TV does, doesn't it? Live TV right now is it's rolling. We're getting live right here. Thank you. The live TV right now is happening. I see you all on boarding. Listen, if you're new here, welcome. We're the Coffee Break Show. We go live Monday through Friday. And we go ahead and we talk about everything. We have a cup of coffee. We have a cup of Joe. And then we go back. Today's guest is blowing up the screens right now. And we're getting to the point where we're having to manage our screens as we go on. Welcome, everybody. Do me a favor and say hello. Oh, my goodness. Let me just tell you, this is blowing my mind. Look at this. Welcome back. Look at that. Good morning from Australia. It's dark 30 in the morning. What a great surprise to have you on here. Hey, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you here. Listen, the stream on YouTube is taken off. It is rocking. And I want to welcome you all. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Welcome, everybody. So glad to meet you. Now, today's guest is going to rock your world. We are going to go to the depths of the known. And I want to let you know that I have known Scott for over a decade. He's a really great friend. But more than that, he is one of the most in the know people that you've ever known. And I want to tell you about him from my point of view. Okay, so he's worked in the news field for over 20 years. He's ABC, NBC, affiliates of all of those. He's been on everything, every newsroom for over. Hello. Wow. Thank you for being here. You guys, thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Great to see you on. Wouldn't miss it, she said. Thank you very much. Woohoo. Man, okay, you guys, slow down. I haven't even gotten to introduce them yet. Oh,
you're working on it, though.
Okay. Hey, Scott and Vickie all the way. Nice to see you all. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. It is going to be a life-changing show. Hello. Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much for being on. Let me introduce the man. Just give me a chance to introduce the man. This thing is going crazy over here, Scott. So, Scott, he is a newsman. He's also a futurist, an economic futurist, and a forecaster. He has a background in meteorology, and he has studied and been involved with economics, I think, since he was like maybe in his early teens or something like that.
Oh,
it's like over 40 years.
Yeah.
But his background is as great as mine is, and probably more on the economic front. And today we're going to have a free-form conversation with him because there's so much he can know and do and be and have right now. Hey, nice to see everyone on. This is going to be the day you want to be here because I am going to push the futurist button with him, and we are going to talk about all things that we can talk about. Please help me introduce my wonderful, amazing friend, Scott Stevens, who is now also a partner at Metadigm. Thank you for being here, sir.
I'm so glad to be here. It's not that early for us, but Australia, I'm a little stunned. It is truly dark 30 there and then some.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us. It's really great this is one interview I've been so excited. Oh my God, I can't wait for this day. And it's here, and I'm so excited to have you with us.
Oh, it's kind of fortuitous that we have ended up where we've ended up in Colorado. And we're kind of in an unusual community in so many regards that people don't just show up here accidentally. It may seem like an accident, but there's always some kind of a little bit of guidance, a little bit of nudges as we go through on life to bring us to where we need to be, in any given moment. So I'm glad to know you, Vickie, and we've been here 10 years, and you guys have been here longer, and we've known each other as long as that.
Yeah. And what's interesting too, because they've also lived in Puerto Rico. They've lived everywhere. I mean, they're really kind of around the world, and we have joined together really to come in and bring this type of new redefined media company together. And he's such a central part of it. And the reason he's a central part of it is because I think, and I believe, and I really want to talk about the State of the Union with you about news and, the fake news and the alternative facts and the things like that. How do people even begin to discern in the news thing what's real, what's not real? How do we even approach at it? What's the State of the Union of our media today?
Well, it depends on your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. It's
Say more.
how you are viewing something. And I kind of put myself in a corner at a very young age. Well, maybe not too young, but in the 20s, where you've had a little experience in the field. You begin to realize that any news story that the reporters go out, you're given an assignment and you retrieve some information, you come back, you edit, you write the copy, and then it's on the air. But if you're lucky, you get 90 seconds. How much of a story can be shared in 90 seconds? And that is a generous allotment of time. Since you take out the commercials, you've got news for 9 minutes. You've got weather for 3.5 minutes, 3 minutes and 45 seconds if I'm doing it, because I'm going to take 15 seconds from sports. It's just, I'm first. And then we carve off that last little feel good story at the end. So sports gets all of their time. And so you're really given a very limited menu of news. And in 90 seconds, there's always going to be some kind of bias. And it's likely biased towards the source that provided you with that clue, with that news tip that you need to go cover this story. And then there isn't time to interview both sides and get into much depth. And so as I kind of went through a bit of a spiritual awakening, when I was turning about 30, I realized that it was going to be volume of information, that you couldn't judge any bit of information, that every bit had a color, a brightness, and then a magnitude or a size that it would eventually fit in this puzzle that I believed I was trying to assemble. So it was this constant, don't judge it, because you may not just have the awareness yet to see where this bit of very odd, very unusual, can't be truthful information fits into the larger picture. And so you don't judge it, you don't throw it away. And that is what I find almost reprehensible to where the news is today. That we are throwing things out simply because of its source, that they do this kind of news. And so I don't have to consider it as being even remotely truthful, as remotely relevant to what's happening in my life or the world or my little sphere.
Yeah.
So when we have this social media venue now, which should have united us, but has further divided us, we can block, we can mute, we can make our echo chamber very, very echoey. So I'm just going to throw out, I read a comment a couple of months ago about the Boris Johnson election in the United Kingdom. And there was a gal that literally could not believe that he won. But when you trim out your social media circle so it's so small that you can't believe what's really happening out there when it happens. And so we have to keep our perspective as wide as possible, as open as possible. One of the big things in the art of warfare is to keep your enemies closer. And if you don't know what your enemies are doing, if you don't know what that other side potentially is even discussing, and we always telegraph our actions first.
Yes.
We do it in thought, and then we'll tell our closest comrades. We'll tell our friends. And then eventually you do it. You follow through. You buy that car. You do this. You paint the house. Whatever action, it's always considered up here first. First is an idea. You'll process it through the thoughts. You'll go through the whole, yes, I should. No, I shouldn't. I don't like that color. I like this color. You go through all of that mental jargon, but rarely is it done in silence. You're always going to telegraph that. So in some ways, we're always psychic, and we're always going to share our moves with others before we actually move. And so you need to be aware of what both sides or all three sides or the whole circle of humanity is doing. And
that's such a powerful point. Such a powerful point. I want to go over that so much because we can surround ourselves with people who think like us, walk like us, talk like us, believe like us, and then not be able to see anything else outside of that. That is such an interesting thing, but that is what's happening. I always make sure that my feed is full of both sides of the conversation, because I believe that we start getting in groups of this conversation only. We're not listening to another conversation. And I think that gives our perspective, it weakens our perspective in the world, and it weakens the responsibility of growing discernment. We start losing discernment. We start believing ourselves. So what is it that you would say to, because I think when I look at the journalistic interview today, what it is tell us the state of the fake news piece too, because I think also in the mix of this is my side, this is your side, I believe they're throwing in a little propaganda in there as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at this, and I want to rewind to our previous conversation just a moment. That if you're surprised by anything happening, you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. They're literally, there's so much information out there that you have not been paying attention. And if you're a liberal, you should subscribe heavily to conservative news outlets, and vice versa. That's just opposition research. That's just how you do it. And then there's a movie. I think we talked about it a couple of days ago. I don't remember if it was brought up on the air or just in personal conversation, but the Minority Report. Tom Cruise. You know, that is your most valuable piece of information, is the Minority Report. What has had another group of persons, they're so interested in this. They see this potential over on this side. They see this outlying event, and it needs to be integrated into your plans, into your game plans, into your contingencies. If you ignore the Minority Report, you'll be surprised. And that's not where we want to go. So in fake news, I think there's always been fake news. There's always been yellow journalism. There's always been personalities responsible for news. There has been a funding entity, a corporation, a wealthy person who has then operated these news organizations. And it all kind of goes through this hierarchy before a story is formulated, especially if it's investigative, because then it's on the docket for days, if not weeks. If it's a serious investigation, if it's a serious project, it's had a lot of hands touch it. And so many good stories where the truth is told to the journalist, but ends up on the cutting room floor, ends up in editing and completely distorted. So it would be difficult. I mean, we saw that happen with, I think it was Meet the Press and Chuck Todd just this past weekend, where NBC had to apologize because they edited something with an agenda in mind. And when you got to apologize the next day, you've got problems. And that really shouldn't happen. You've got probably journalistic students who would not be so biased. But bless their hearts. And I don't know that you can fix this until you take commercials out of news. Until you
interesting.
Do that.
That's interesting that you said that. That's very insightful.
These conglomerates, NBC Universal, ABC Disney, CBS, they've all got, or Viacom is with CBS. So you've got these monstrosities that have small news departments, and they make enough money. There's enough profit that goes back to their shareholders that they don't have to run news commercials, especially all the pharmaceuticals. That's almost all you're watching when you see that 21 minutes of news. There's 9 minutes of pharmaceuticals. You need this to feel better. And so we're programming them with, you're already deficient because you need this product so you can be a whole person. You got to take the commercials out of it. You just do. And then it frees up the news department, to produce more content, to do more long form content, and potentially to not PO some investors or some commercial people.
There's a bunch of people agreeing with you now. I'm like, they are on fire today, Scott. It is over on the side. It's moving so fast, I can't really get to everybody's statements or questions. Stephen says our biased behavior blocks us from listening to others. So true, my friend. It's difficult to separate our programming from fact or opinion. Yes, it is right now. I listen to Fox and CNN, and I find the news is too far right or too far left. And I try to listen, but yet I find myself being biased. This is an interesting thing. I really want to go here, Scott. This is what about citizen journalism? Does that really fit into the mold here? And how is that shaping how do you feel about citizen journalism right now?
I think it's important. I don't think there is any journalism that's doing more work, more honest work than citizen journalism right now. And we can see that by the list of entities that have been censored, that have been deplatformed by Facebook, by YouTube, by Twitter, and there is a place to lead any nation from that middle road, because as human beings, we have more in common than we have out of common, if you will. And there's a place where you can bring both sides together and find that middle road where, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's protection of environment, whether it's simple civil liberties that have been guaranteed us by our birth. I don't care where you've been born. We have liberties granted us by birth.
Yes.
And protection from corporate overreach and from regulatory capture of government by corporations. When is a corporation a person? That to me is ridiculous.
I know
ridiculous.
that's I think the biggest issue.
And I know that the Democrats and Republicans, or the liberal and the Tories, they all have more in common than they're willing to admit. Because if we could agree to that common ground, we could have strong, honorable leadership, and that both sides will let go of their hatred to each other, their anxiety about someone from the other side of the aisle, coming into leadership. And if you could bring that together, we can do so much for humanity, because we are truly at a crisis point with so many issues, whether it's health, whether it's electromagnetic radiation from 5G. I'm a little concerned about that. There's not been any tests, and that's something that needs to be evaluated before it's rolled out whole scale, even though that push has already begun. And another one is climate. There are changes happening that we're not looking at. And we need in this issue to be looking at the Minority Report. Why is there such a resistance to, okay, let's go back.
Wait a minute. I want to just jump in here, because this to me is the futurist aspect of you. And I really want to let you have full realm. And I'm like, if you're on here, you should be taking notes and paying attention and throwing your questions in. Scott, let's go down that rabbit hole. Maybe top 5 things or whatever you want to do for this futurist piece. You talked about climate. You've talked about just, let's start sharing what you see as, let's say the next decade to 2030.
Yeah. For me, it's climate. I mean, that was my background, and I'm a very spiritual person. And I tend to believe that we are given the career, the hobby / interest, the talents. We come in born with these things to use for a purpose, to be a voice where a voice doesn't necessarily exist. So I think I know we have a climate issue, and we've got kids protesting. They're not going to school, but they're afraid of the wrong thing. We've got an issue. But as with so many government-sponsored problems, the issue is the other direction, not in the way we're looking. And if we're looking ahead, we're looking at CO2. If we look behind us, you might find the sun shining a little less brightly. The sun with an electromagnetic and sunspots and energy coming off the sun. So the whole thing is shrinking a little bit. And so we are dealing with an output from the sun that is very, very cyclical. And it's curious to see how peer review in papers, whether it's medical, whether it's meteorology and climatology, whether it's in economics. We're completely using peer review to ignore the minority report. It is the round of applause of peers who think the same way. Here, here's your paper published, and off you go with your big check in hand because you have towed the party line. And so I know we're seeing events, and that's kind of why I had to jump in and begin doing these weather shows, because we're going to
Yeah.
see a continuation of part of the planet warming and other places cooling. We live typically in the mid latitudes, not in the Arctic and not in the tropics, but it's this mid latitude where we see the greatest productivity, where humankind lives, our grains, our potatoes, our beans, that which we eat almost every single day. And we are seeing an increased frequency of, yes, drought, of flooding, but of spikes of cold. So you can have locations that see normal temperatures or even above normal temperatures. And that's what the majority reports on is, yes, temperatures are going up. However, we had this crazy killing frost that
Yes.
came 6 weeks
Just a
early,
couple of days ago. Yeah.
or a record late spring snow. And what happens is we see our productivity, our potential productivity, shrinking by these outlying weather events, these crises that we have insurance for, but insurance doesn't put food on the table.
That's
Can't do
right.
it. And I think it was Native Americans said, you can't eat money. You're going to wreck
Yeah.
the environment. You can't eat money. And
I
so there
want to,
needs to be
I want to go
priorities.
I want to go here, Scott, because I think this is interesting. Climate change seems to be a tax on people, another money grab. How do we have to be taxed, or how much do we have to be taxed to change for climate change to be fixed? Interesting. This is an interesting get, and I see this perspective a lot. And tell me what you think of this, or what your thoughts are on that.
It doesn't matter whether we have no money or all the money in the world. It's not going to change the weather. I came into this and kind of stepped out of my box because I saw geoengineering happening. I came to that very profound personal insight changing that I can't forecast the weather because there is
That's right.
geoengineering happening. And that put me in the minority report. All of
That's
a
true.
sudden,
I want to talk about that for a second, because you were a whistleblower. You were the first whistleblower that noticed. And remember back in the 80s, and we used to tease the weatherman because he couldn't figure out the weather. And they were all like, well, he said it was supposed to be this, and there's nothing. There's no rain. That's a interesting whistleblowing piece you're speaking of now. And I want you to say more of that. But I want them to know you were the first whistleblower.
first in the media that I am aware of. There may have been others, and I had the other meteorologists and other people that were on the air begin to ping me. This was 2004, 2005, 2006. But I was deep into the, shall we say, rabbit hole of free energy. That if we had free energy, that we would be living in a different world. We
Yes,
were wrapping up and just completing 9/11, and that was setting the stage for another war in the Middle East. And if we didn't have energy, if we didn't have to rely on this certain place in the Middle East for oil, that our foreign policy as Americans would be different. Our dollar and how it is used as the primary medium of exchange across the planet would be different. We wouldn't be the big dude on the block with the military walking around,
that's right.
swinging it, and so I'm like, this was a problem, and I could see a problem. This was 2000, 2001. And I was looking at free energy and energy from the vacuum, because once you understand that we are in the physical dimension and there are many dimensions layered above this, and each
Mhm.
one, I don't want to say infinitely because that implies infinity, and we're not, because there are finite limits between the layers and more energy as you scale up, that we can draw down that power from another dimension into this dimension. And that was the technology I got into from a Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden. And he was a nuclear physicist who in the 80s had come out and said, hey, the Russians are doing this. And I'm like, oh, that's curious. And then started showing pictures of clouds. And I was fascinated because the atmosphere is a gas and it should be free flowing, just like a stream of water. And he was showing pictures of clouds that had shapes, shapes that can only be manifest when there's a kind of resonance introduced. And okay. So I bought a digital camera, and all of a sudden, the photography me is framing out the sky. And as soon as you walk like a photographer on a movie set and start framing out the sky, you begin to isolate and highlight and accentuate the odd geometry that's there. And by 2004, maybe 2.5 years into this, I was utterly convinced that something was going on. And I saw a satellite picture one Sunday evening, and my stomach sank because I realized
Mm.
how complete that the weather had been captured and then used against us. These random acts of God were really, as Defense Secretary William Cohen said in the Clinton administration, eco terrorism. So if
Yes.
you can have insurance pay for these things and have them called acts of God, you can get away with this for a lot longer than if you had, if the public had true awareness that we could have yet turned this planet into a Garden of Eden versus a terrorist playground
And
and all of the
that
alarming.
is that is the key right there. And I want to say something. Scott, he was a featured expert in the award-winning documentary "Why in the World They Spraying." This guy has put his journalistic chops really out there for the world to be seen. So I want to say right now, if you're a family and you're living through this pandemic, let's say, what are 5 things you want to focus on as a family for the next decade? And what do you want to watch for? What are the things that are, I know I'm putting you on the spot as a futurist. I know I'm putting you on the spot right here. And I know that I'm doing it because I have enough love bank with you to do it. But I also want to say, the people are on fire right now. This thing is just blowing up on the side. I don't even know how to keep up with it, but it's still past. Is it okay if we still keep
Yeah,
going?
of course, of course, of
Good,
course.
because thank you.
Because I'm
So
not
I
drinking
want to
coffee.
say it's like right now in the journalistic eye, the futuristic eye, the climate change eye, what is it, the most important 5 things a family needs to concentrate on right now so that it'll help them get to 2030, maybe just having good quality of life.
Sure, sure. And I wouldn't suggest anything to anyone that I already haven't done.
Great.
That's just the way it is. So I tend to take action first, and then, but also as we talked about early up, we're a little psychic, and we start
Mhm.
telegraphing the things we're going to do ahead of time. This COVID, whether this breakdown in economy was going to be because of you and I had previous discussions, was going to be economic. I thought it
Yeah,
was going to be debt.
I
You can
did
only print
too.
up so
I
much
thought the
paper.
debt thing was going to clam.
Yep.
And now this black swan happened.
Yep. And here it is in a flock.
Mhm.
So we're not done with this. We want to open up. We want to go to work. I mean, why
Mhm.
wouldn't you?
Yes.
Funds are limited, and we've got to bring in funds as long as we're in this economic system. So my anticipation, and something I have felt inside for a long, long time, is that this economic system, let's just say, I will outlive it. I will be here longer than this system will exist. And most of us
Interesting.
probably will too. So, how does that break down, and what do we need to do to sustain ourselves, to support our families, to participate in a productive way with our neighborhoods and our cities?
Hmm.
So, I have been an advocate of digital currency.
Oh, yeah.
I believe, and I can see how that it's had 5, 10 years to mature, that it can be there to help us as we lose our fiat, our central banks, those entities, those families, those structures that have taken so much from us for so
Yes.
many decades.
Yes.
They will not have a place in the future. So this is simply getting a life vest, a lifeboat out ahead of time before their bloody
Yes.
Titanic sinks. So you've got to have a medium of exchange, a means of exchange. I was previously gold and silver, and I still think there's a place for it.
Me too.
However, this pandemic has changed that. with social distancing. They're trying
Mhm.
to or will contemplate taking cash away from us. But I think they'll probably take cash away from themselves as the system breaks and it simply becomes paper. Paper.
Mhm.
What do you do with paper? You burn it, you use it to wipe, you do something with paper, or you put it all on the wall and you tell your grandkids, you remember when? So digital assets. The other thing is, and we're beginning to see this, is a migration out of the cities.
Mhm.
I grew up rural. I grew up, with chickens and a cow, and I hated it at the time. But the wisdom of why I was put there and raised that way now makes complete sense. And so, best not complain about childhood because it'll serve you in the coming years.
Yeah.
So, I think living more rural, where you can tear up that lovely, to Kentucky bluegrass in the front side yard and put in a garden. You got to have some calories. We're going to need that. I think we're going to see an incredible accelerated pace of de-globalization. We're going to de-link from China. And I think at least we have a little bit of a head start with a couple of years before this pandemic broke, roared onto the scene, and we realizing the silliness of sourcing apples from 7,000 miles away when they're grown in Washington and in Wisconsin and
Yeah.
across them. I mean, it's literally just what the heck were we thinking? It's just ridiculous. But it was nothing more than a consolidation of power, an owning of the supply chains that goes back to those corporations that have issued the money, want to control what we eat, want to control the land. And so that's going to happen is the deglobalization. The other thing is so important is education.
Yes.
Education. There I saw a study just last week how the institution of Common Core has gutted the future of a
Mhm.
whole K through 12 class of kids because this was like 2002 when it came on the scene, and so we're 18 years into this, and
Yeah.
it's sad. I look at what these kids are taught, and like I was good at arithmetic. You get to calculus, and that was a whole nother beast. But we at least got what feels like it seems to me was a better education. So I would like to see the Department of Education just almost axed, send it back to the states, let 50 examples worked out
Yes.
and demonstrate what's best. We decentralize education. We need to decentralize the system. Give the power back to the local school boards, give the power back so that they can teach and show and demonstrate what's best for the coming generations. I think that's terribly important. I think that
I
the
have
fourth thing. Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I want to make sure you see this question right here
Great.
because what's the likelihood of witnessing the death of big institutions and the emergence of small business as the dominant economic system? Now, that's going to be an interesting question.
Inevitable. It's
Inevitable.
inevitable. It's inevitable. It's already begun. We need to deal with the big regulatory structures, the EPA, the FDA, sometimes the Department of Commerce. Some of these structures that are put in place to keep the small and mid-sized business us from impacting those corporate giants which own Congress. They own the
Hmm.
lobbies. They're too small to afford to have their say in the mix in Washington. So if we break the banks, when we break the banks, and a part of me just wants to cheer on. Here, another 3 trillion for this, another 2 trillion for that. Load the system down so it eventually breaks because that's what they're doing. If they want to guarantee
Yeah.
every person, every household, $2, $4, $6,000 a month, all we're doing, the fuse is lit. All we're doing is taking that fuse that only has so much time and we're lighting it closer to the bomb. That's what
That's
all
right.
of this free money does because one day it will go and the explosion will be spectacular. There will be debris all around, and that's where the small businesses, those who have an asset, can then begin to hire, to begin to sustain and support and micro manufacturing, micro distribution, micro
Yes.
farming. That's what it's
Yes.
going to go back to. That's what's healthy. That's what's healthy. The other fourth thing before we hit
Yeah,
that,
thank you. I was going to go back and go, here's the thing. Fourth thing, go back. And the fifth thing as well.
what do we do with 25 million? And that's just in here in Canada. Students who have educations that are not necessarily going to have a place in the future. What do
Yes.
we do? And I see environmental cleanup. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be probably a 2-generation project. They are so inspired. They want to act. They want to contribute. And if before oil fails, I would love to see a 10% tax on every single barrel. Every single barrel, a tariff, boom, right there. And it goes into an environmental remediation fund so that we've got assets to come back in and undo the fracking, to repair the water, to pull these things and seal the wells. Because you look at Google Earth and you look at West Texas, Eastern New Mexico, Western Kansas, Eastern Colorado, so much of Wyoming, and it's wrecked. It's utterly wrecked. And this is something that's going to take a huge amount of energy to begin to repair. We can do it. We can do it. But we're going to have to decide that that's more important than whatever has our attention now.
And this is so important what he's saying. What's it? The fifth thing, I'm looking at income, food supply, education, energy. What's the fifth future thing? Yes.
Who are we?
Yes. Ooh, my
Who
hair stood up when you said it.
What are we as a people? What are we as individual beings? Who are we? We're not even. It makes you want to cry, because if you knew your potential as a human being, as a
Yes.
spiritual being with a history on this planet that goes back so far, and if you knew what your inheritance is, that so many things that have your attention now just would be like Tinker Toys. I see that. I played there, No. I'm bigger than that. I'm better than that.
Yes.
I am majestic. We are majestic beings with a potential that has been hammered back into the sand by pollution, by bad
Mhm.
food, by propaganda, and by outright lies. If we knew what the Smithsonian, the National Geographic Society, all of those have discovered just about our archaeological heritage, but then there's what's going on up in space. What's going on up there? This creation is so large that we mentally cannot grasp its greatness. And for us to even consider for a moment that we are it, that we are the sum total of
Yeah.
what's out there, is just ridiculous. So that's the other thing that we can have massive discussions about it. And there's so many aspects to it. Is who are we? What are we here for? Individually, what can we accomplish? What can we accomplish as families, as communities, and then as a people? I mean, there are monuments on this planet that have lasted tens of thousands of years. What inspired them to build these things? What message were they leaving? And I promise you, it wasn't slave labor that built these things. These were inspired projects meant to leave a message through time. So
Yes. Even
that's
that's that Mayan calendar and that Mayan prophecies and everything else that was left to us there, all of that architecture in Mexico.
And when we come out of right and left, blue and red discussions, we can begin to engage each other and our future with a menu of topics and an excitement for the future that we have not experienced since maybe JFK. It's been a long, long time that we've been in the wilderness. And I think those days, and part of me wants to thank this COVID experience for kind of bringing us back to home, showing us what's important, that we can live a different way, that we can have different outcomes rather than that which is just you go to the grocery store and you're going to eat this or that. Maybe
Yeah.
that over there if you're kind of brave, but it's in a whole nother food section. No, we're more than that. And I'm excited to know that we're on the verge of that awakening. And it isn't just in the States, although there's always one torchbearer. There's always one light that's a little bit brighter. And I think that was the beauty of this country and its potential.
Yes.
And we have turned,
I still think we're that. I still
I
think
know
that's
we
a possibility.
I know we are. And there
Mhm.
was a time 10, 20 years ago where the flag kind of gave me the cringes. It triggered me because it was used in ways that I felt were just not healthy, that were not moral. But it can be turned around. Everything can be turned around.
That's right. And that's the potential right now. We
Yep.
can turn this ship around. Stephen, too many don't really care who they are. We don't teach you how to discover your true potential and find your soul or become your soul, because that's actually who you are. I know who I am at almost 80. I think that, thank you for this. You guys have been just piling on so much here. I can't get to it all. I'm trying to. The new I is we, doing is together. Love that. The new I is we, doing it together. Yes. So Stephen's going to go green. The only way to save our planet. Yes, we have a regeneration economy happening, a regeneration economy that is there to help build this new world. And you're right, it is done by a lot by the younger societies and the younger things. And so,
They have
uh,
the energy.
yeah,
They have the energy. They've got the strength. They've
yes,
got a future ahead of them. They'll leave it to their kids that are just being born or will be born shortly.
yeah,
It I don't want to say it bothers me, but it concerns me that we allow people that are so close to the end of their lives to dictate direction of a society that is so much younger. We default to
yes.
a Warren Buffett who's 90, to a George Soros who is 90, to these people who have accumulated so much wealth by questionable ways to dictate policy to parties. No, 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 no. We need to take that power back.
Yes, I agree with that. That is going to go back to communities and individuals here. So, Scott, um, I, I'm this. It's going like fire right now. I'm just letting it fly
Sure.
by and kind of go up. Yeah, it's doing really well. Believe the young care when I see clean highways.
Well, do you remember the 70s when
Yeah.
we had those PSAs with
Yes.
the
With the
Indian guy?
Indian, with
Yeah,
the
and the
yeah, with the
tear.
teardrop.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that made a difference. That had an impact. And I've not done a lot of traveling in my life, but you get so accustomed to clean highways, to clean roads, to clean yards that when you go someplace where there is
Yes.
disregard for that, it really, do these people not care? And the answer has to be, yeah, they really don't. There's an absence of responsibility.
George Soros and Warren Buffett. I heard somebody call them angry old white men. I love this from Jane Goodhart. This virus is giving us an opportunity to change our direction for the better for all.
It
Yes,
is.
it is. It is. It's a hidden blessing, really, in my case. Scott, I want to turn the conversation. Oh, look at this, everybody. Yep, Jane agreed. Tell me about your current project that you're going on with Metadigm. Tell me about what you're hoping to bring. You're going to bring a show to the Metadigm channel, and I want to really spend some time with you talking about what you're going to be doing and how fun it's going to be, and say more about that.
I think there's a song, Natasha Bedingfield, that she said, "What is it? The rest is unwritten."
Yes.
Something along those lines, unwritten, and that's where we are. The future is unwritten, and these are things that I would like to talk about. And as we change our perspective and how we see the future, we can see beyond the minutia of the moment, the problems of today, and how if we focus beyond that, the things that around us that seem to be insurmountable become very clear and how to resolve them. And if we can create a future, if we can create let's just say an ideal, then all how we approach getting to that ideal and implementing that ideal, then today's problems become very, very easy to come to agreement and terms in how to resolve and simply close. So they're not a problem. We can deal with healthcare. We don't solve healthcare problems with treatments. We solve it with cures.
Yeah.
Straight up. We don't deal with unhealthy food and processed food with a larger, how do a SNAP budget. No, that
Yeah.
just keeps people going through the line and eating the same stuff. So if we look beyond our immediate problems and begin to focus on how we want to deal with this for what would be grandkids or great grandkids, then today's problems just melt away. It's so simple. It really is so simple if you can look at things from a 360-degree view rather than from on one side of this perpetual aisle. And as long as we have government that glorifies one side versus another, we will forever stay on one side or the other. And you can't be president, you can't be this, or you can't be that unless you choose a side. And
I
as
know, that's
soon
terrible.
as you choose a side, you've almost entered a form of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're a slave to defending that side regardless of what it does. I remember when in the George W. Bush era that there was one side that was very anti-war, and all of a sudden they're pro-war. And this is just in my short adulthood that we can be so swayed by hours and hours and hours of TV news that we abandon our beliefs, we abandon our morals so we can identify with one aisle or one other side of the aisle. What do you do? Are we not better than that? Can we not see a larger picture than that? Apparently not. But I know we can. I know we
Yeah.
can.
I love this. There's a question for you. I'm going to come back to it, but I love this. False paradigms keep us fighting, not solving. So, in your show, tell me what you're going to bring in your show. Are you going to bring these perspectives into your show and talk about other possibilities other than what is happening in the
Yeah.
mainstream news?
Yeah. If we talk about the mainstream news, then we don't get out of the mainstream news.
That's right.
We got to talk about ideas. We've got to talk about solutions. We've got to talk about how together we can solve these things. And I know people don't want to continue this angst, this yelling, this screaming, this protesting, this. No, we want to be done with that. It's exhausting because what it does is it rapes our productivity. It rapes our potential. We're not able to realize what we can be because we're so drawn to the evening talk show upon which we'll pit one side versus the other. And we don't even pit one side versus the other. We just glorify and with spotlights look at one side and say, hey, see? And there's nobody over there to respond. There's nobody over there with another perspective to get people thinking outside. It becomes so one-sided. And since it's not healthy, it's not balanced, there's no truth. There may be facts, there may be some information, but they're always presented with a questionable context. And if you don't have the context, then what good is a fact? What good is the number 2 with a plus symbol, and then maybe there's another number 2 over there on the other side, and all we see is this, and that. We don't ever realize that there's a 4 involved.
Yeah.
So it's so
We
split
need
up.
another perspective. And that's actually the name of his show is Smart Perspectives. I want to go here because, oh my God, we are so on fire. You guys, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to get it to as many questions. Please remember this question. I want to show a couple of things. False paradigms keeping us fighting, not solving problems. Thank you very much. Suzanne says, as the corrupt is removed, then healthcare will make a huge transition in the future. Many cures and therapies will then be released. This is very exciting time to be alive. We're able to witness transformation for the good like we have never seen before. I totally agree with that.
What do you do to the federal budget if you could take healthcare down by 90% because we have cures? What happens to that budget? It shrinks. And government for me should not grow year after year. If government actually worked, it would put itself out of business because the problems are solved.
That's
And
right.
that should be the goal, is to put government out of business because we have matured a civilization to deal with itself. A new law is only an admission that we have degenerated as a society. Straight up.
Yes.
You need a law,
Say
that
that
means you're
again.
degenerating.
Yeah.
We got to take this code. We have rooms full of US code. Every country has more code than they need.
Yeah.
Take it back. We started with just 2-3 sheets of paper, and that is enough guidance if you're honorable and integrity as your guiding lights in how you do your business and
Thank
live your
you.
life.
Okay, so here, the truly wise discuss ideas, not positions and personalities. Agree with that. Thank you so much. This is extraordinary content, one of the most valuable coffee breaks. Thank you. I want to go back up to here because I think this is a valid question. And life is a projection of consciousness. How do we want, not fear, our future to be? Now, that's very much because I still believe what you focus on grows. And you can see what is growing because of what people are focusing on. When we focus and act with intention, we have two sides again. Life is a projection of consciousness. How do we want, not fear, our future to be?
That's really kind of simple because if we go back way to the beginning, there are probably some very basic rules as to how to engage your fellow man. And for me, do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
Do no harm. And if you can
Thank you.
come with that, then we don't have anything to fear. It's the same with our animals, who basically are unconditional in their love. That's how they are. And if we're not fear fed with our food, with the news, with families and parenting that's kind of questionable, it's going to take a little bit of a change, but we can get to that point. But we just need to, as you mentioned early on, how do we change our focus and let that expand, which we want to glorify, which would be do no harm, love one another. Most of us
Yeah.
have been raised in one religion or another, and that is a very, very basic commandment: love one another.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch gears right now, everybody, because we're getting to the top of the hour, and I'm actually keeping him on here. So you guys are flying. It just is amazing. Thank you, everybody, for everything you're putting out here. This is so important to do and know. But here's the thing: Scott is now going to be going live every single day on our channel to share the weather. And he's a meteorologist and one of the best in my book in the world. So much experience with this, but not because it was a career. It was because it was a little boy passion. And his whole career right now has been built on being a whistleblower over some things in the weather. And so what I want to say is Scott's going to go live 5 days a week and do something called Scott's Weather. And if you have not been on that show, you are going to be on that. What time do you go live? 7 p.m.?
7 Mountain.
7 p.m. Mountain. So 8 or 9 at night on the East Coast and 6 on the West Coast. So
The internet never forgets.
Yes,
So it's there.
#replay. And then also we're going to be doing a show. He's going to be going live doing Smart Perspectives. Now, Smart Perspectives, for you that have been enjoying and just absolutely rabid with the conversation today, this is the show to watch. This is where the futurist and the journalist meet. This is the one place that online you are going to get a perspective that is both sides. I'm looking at this. Please put a link in his channel. Well, the channel is right here. It's the Metadigm Network channel. You are on that channel right now. So at 7 p.m. when you come back to this page right here, that show will be on. And when are we dropping the first show? Tell me what your show schedule is right now for the Metadigm channel.
Well, I think we're trying to fit it in between what already exists, so we have some content spread out over some days.
Mm-hmm.
So Wednesday.
It's Wednesday. You're going.
Wednesday?
Is it Wednesday? And I thought you were going to go live 2 days a week with
Yeah.
Smart Persuasion. One or two?
Let's do
One?
two. Let's do
Two.
two.
We're going to do two because I think right now more people are going to be interested in what they need to know to help them through the future. They're going to, more people are going to be on this going, yes, I want the ideas. I want to know what it is. And I want to be on the show. And here's what I want to say, Scott. The timing for you is so perfect so that we can here are success secrets for business, family, and life. The show will be live here. And that's where the show's going to be, on this channel right here that you're on. We're going to be bringing you more shows with more great people, with more great insights. We are creating new media. This is media redefined right now. And Scott, it's such a privilege to have you. I'm so fortunate and so lucky to have you with us, because we want to be able to bring these really great perspectives to people so that they understand a different view, the middle road or the understanding road, where there isn't any chaos or other propaganda and no ads.
Yeah, we're not their slaves.
That's right.
We're not their slaves. No. You can be born in a corral, but that doesn't mean you have to live your life there.
That's right. And so we're going to be bringing you Smart Perspective Show. It's going to be on the Metadigm Channel Network. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today, Scott.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
It's
no weepies. No weepies.
I'm trying not to, but you know how I feel about that. I'm like, thank you for being here. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. You guys, tomorrow we are going to be on Thursday. We're going to have a great conversation. I will see you all tomorrow. Peace out. Mwah! Thank you, Scott. All right.
Keep looking up.
That's right. Keep looking up. Look for the weather show. It's